All right, so yeah, my name is Gabriel Kanelopoulos. I currently reside in San Antonio, Texas, with my wife Katie. And Katie's right down here. She's actually going to be leading worship or helping lead worship tomorrow at the morning session. So can't wait to see you guys there. Also, it's going to be super awesome. I know God just always is awesome everywhere He's moving. So I'm already having just a blast at this event. Honestly, it's just making sense right now. This is so God ordained. This is like a blast. It's definitely a shift in my mind. I'm an engineer, and I'm seeing faith in the church collide in ways I've never been. And I've been in faith and technology for a while as well. So I just want to thank you guys for being here. This is a really diverse group, I can tell. So let me give you a little exposition as to how I got here. Actually, one night, not even 2 months ago, I couldn't fall asleep until 4 a.m. And I know, like every engineer or author, architect, professor, we all have these kind of restless nights, right? But this particular night, I was wrestling with this one thought. And there was revival happening in the workplace. And it was like God was just kind of whispering it to me in my ear over and over. There's revival happening in the workplace. So there's revival happening where solutions are being made, where creativity is being brought forth. There is revival in inventive thought. So the next morning I went to work, and it was a normal day, except I was a little bit exhausted. So that night, my wife got home, and guess who she had spent all day with? Cheryl Chin. You guys know Cheryl? Cheryl's super cool. So it turns out Cheryl had flown in for the day, and she was she was actually doing, there she is, she was actually doing some business meetings with my wife and others down here at the front. And this is awesome because we've been getting to know Cheryl over the past few months on some different fronts, and we've been witnessing God's miracles in the workplace together at an increasing rate, and it's really, really cool to see. So it turns out she got on a plane, flew home, right? So it turns out the next day, my wife, I guess 2 days later, my wife got on a plane and went to San Francisco to do more business with Cheryl. So it's like, that's a really fun way to do business, right? So how does this relate to my sleepless night? So that night, actually, Katie called me and she goes, this is crazy, but Cheryl, she told me about Passion Talks. She told me what's going on at Passion Talks. She said, and you know what? It's about science, technology, and God. You've got to submit an abstract. And the deadline's tomorrow. So I said, okay, look, I can do this. I'm an engineer, and I've actually got to work. I've had the opportunity to work on some neat bodies of research. And I've had papers presented at some conferences, etc. So I quickly was reminded, actually, of a particular conference, a biology conference at the University of Pittsburgh. So I chalked up an abstract and submitted it. Now, as I was preparing for this day, today, I started to realize something about the abstract I had submitted. That abstract was for a talk that was presented for a room full of synthetic biologists, philosophers of science, and engineers, all PhDs. And I started to realize something. So that talk was a new engineering paradigm for synthetic biologists. That was what we were exploring. Google is full of engineers, but I'm not sure how many philosophers of science or synthetic biologists are here, though I don't doubt there are some with us, so that's really cool if you're here. But, maybe not the highest percentage. So today, instead of just regurgitating that talk I gave, the presentation at the University of Pittsburgh, let me tell you a story about it from an engineer's perspective. So Dr. Halsmer is a professor of engineering who has a unique gifting for sharing God's love and his purpose for us through the language of science and engineering. He actually has organized a group of researchers to do just this. And while at university, I got to be a part of it. So for the conference at the University of Pittsburgh, Re-Engineering Biology, we presented on a paradigm of reverse engineering called affordance-based reverse engineering. We proposed mechanisms for which this way of approaching reverse engineering lends use to the understanding of complex biological systems. Affordance-based reverse engineering. So what is an affordance, if any of you guys know? Simply put, an affordance is a relationship that results in a capability. In some cases, this is a capability between a piece of technology and a user. Take, for instance, the coffee cup above. Can you guys identify any affordances that a user might perceive with the coffee cup? maybe a handle for lifting. You could put your beautiful latte in the cup, right? Or maybe you could turn it on the side and use it as a hammer. Maybe you fill it with pens and it sits on your desk. These are all things that the coffee cup affords the end user. So this is unique because engineers actually create affordances all the time. In software, a great deal of thought must go into what your technology will afford the end user. So whether this is through the user interface or through an API, what your software affords and how the user perceives it are very important aspects of design. Now take a look at the exploded view schematic of the iPhone. You can see that in complex systems, affordances are arranged in what we call nested affordances. Now we know that these systems, the coffee cup, the iPhone, they were both designed by humans. So how does an affordance lend use to natural systems? Well, it turns out that affordance, the term affordance, is a metaphysically neutral term. So for instance, regardless of worldview, we can all agree that the complex components of a brain afford the ability for a human to think. So let's get back to Pittsburgh, a room full of PhDs in synthetic biology, philosophy of science, and engineering. A new engineering paradigm for synthetic biology. Dr. Halsmer reaches a climax of the presentation that we prepared, where he references a man named Kafka. You may know of him, a famous psychologist who talks about affordances. Now, Kafka states that affordances are capabilities that a creature has by virtue of its relationship to the environment. He writes that affordances are directly perceived in nature. In fact, things tell us, he says, precisely what to do with them. So these are some examples from Kafka. And I need your guys' help on this. So try to finish this sentence. A fruit tells you, anybody? A fruit tells you, eat me. Right? Okay, there. So you just get this. This is what we perceive in nature. So water tells me, there we go. Thunder says, fear me. And a woman says, love me. Yeah. So we were kind of laughing, and Dr. Halsmer says, this is Kafka. Those are his examples. He said, well, I can think of this as like a 19th century, so it's a mid 20th century philosopher or psychologist. He says, I can think of a gender neutral 21st century way of looking at this because I think Kafka's onto something. He says, what if humans afford the ability to love? He puts a very important reference up on the projector. He says, Proverbs 19:22, what a person desires is unfailing love. So front and center on the 8th floor of the Cathedral of Learning, University of Pittsburgh, #1 school of philosophy in the world, God's truth sucked all the air out of the room. So my purpose today is this, and it makes sense because of the talks that are coming up. Who are your people? How has God equipped you to reach them? And how will you respond to the greatest affordance we can perceive in nature? Thank you.